All right, good afternoon. This is the meeting of the Personnel Committee for July 13th. And I'm David Peden, the chair of the Personnel Committee, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. So today we've got an agenda outlined and what we need to do in terms of starting the process of hiring a executive director for the trust. So Ms. Alpier can go back to enjoying her life. So during this process, I think starting off, there's a presentation by the County Attorney's Office. Someone here?
And Kristen is here, and she's mainly here to answer questions, if anybody has any, and then she can go, as she said, she gave a presentation, or we had a presentation about Sunshine, but if anybody had any specific questions about what this meant in terms of a search process.
I believe it was Allison who gave a Sunshine presentation to the council. And I was told that you all would be acting somewhat in the capacity of a selection committee. And to be perfectly honest, the Sunshine Law applies to a selection committee in much the same way that it would apply to the council at large. So I wasn't sure exactly what questions you may have in that regard. Or if you just had general questions about the Sunshine Law.
For people listening in, this is Rex North. I'm a member of the council, but not formally a member of the selection committee, but I do have a question of whether you will be here. What I would envision is as we go through this process, even the agenda here today, that questions for you may pop up. And some of the questions I would envision coming back to the council as a whole in regards to exactly what role they want this personnel committee to have. I was listening into some of the discussion of vetting various candidates potentially for hire, going through and selecting down out of that pool to the top one or two candidates as they perceive it, or exactly, or David, you may have a clearer idea already of exactly what role the subcommittee is to play in regards to bringing this person on, as opposed to what role or what processes and things want to come to the council as a whole. But you, as I say, you may have a clearer understanding of that already.
I believe this committee is to start the process and get us set up to go down that road of hiring someone. But I think when we get to the point, the overall board's going to have input and see the applications and evaluate and look at the criteria and everything we need to do, that everybody's involved with it. This committee, since everybody can't attend every committee meeting, this is just a starting point. And so today is the first time we've met as a personnel committee, and while we've been anticipating this meeting, and I think that's some of the county attorney's office, and then we just have different sets of guidelines under Sunshine that we just can't go out and hire someone like a normal private business would. So everything's open. There's a process to it, and looking at that process, and we discussed, I believe, at one of our meetings, and about the job description, which we're going to talk about today, and see if we're good with that, if that meets our needs, and then how we go about implementing that in terms of who's going to be the intake for the applications, where we're going to advertise. Are we going to look at an outside business to help us with that process and to call the list and qualify the folks and background checks, everything we need to do before it comes to our full board. So that's probably how we're just getting started.
So my thinking would be then, if you would be available, I'm looking particularly at number 4 on our agenda, begins a discussion of qualifications, participation requirements, advertisements, process itself. where I could conceivably see some questions might come up, that clarification would be helpful in regards to the Sunshine Law, but I may just be speaking in my own bit of wanting to talk with me like I'm 5 years old. I'm the pediatrician in the group, remember, so.
So let me ask you this. If we did have an outside agency, or I say agency, but a company that would vet what Sunshine Law are they under? So when somebody
In-
sends an application, that means it's public record and,
Correct. In my
So-
opinion, if that task is delegated to a private entity to perform on your behalf, on the council's behalf, then they would be subject to the same requirements.
right. So they'd have to be up to speed on the Sunshine Law and how that, everything
They would have to,
communication-wise and,
yes, all the same rules would apply.
okay. Patty, the school board just hired Dr. Smith. What did y'all do?
We hired our Florida School Boards Association. They have a search team made up of a school board, the school board executive officer, a superintendent, and an HR person. So they cover the gamut of things. And they, because of Sunshine, they were the group that took the applications in. There was one person on the team that the applications were emailed to. That person's responsibility was basically just to make sure the application was complete. In other words, there were a couple that inadvertently left a page out, and he would contact that person, ask for the additional. As soon as they had the complete application, it was sent to us to post on our website. They did kind of an initial vetting, to see if the minimum qualifications were met. But at any time, someone could have asked for any of the documentation that was sent to them. But then they sent it to us within hours. He usually downloaded every application that came in on one day of the week. But anybody could have asked for it at any time. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that clarifies a lot of stuff.
I have a point of information, I guess, and question along with this. I serve on the board of the Healthy Start Coalition here in Escambia County as well. We have an executive director, and the current executive director in the past, at least the one immediately prior to this, I know, I'm just raising this again as an observation and maybe a question as well. That individual is actually employed by Landrum on our behalf, and we did the vetting of the individual that was hired, et cetera, et cetera. But I just raised that as another potential consideration of this. And then Landrum took on all of the things of background checks and their ongoing personnel benefits and all those types of things. And I just throw that out to the group as a consideration, or again, as a question, whether anything like that be a potential alternative arrangement, and if so, benefits or pros and cons to doing that type of thing.
Well, I think that's a possibility. If the council sees fit to go in that direction. I personally think that it's going to be a big task for Ms. Alpiard to handle something of that nature while she's still helping us with our boards. But there are firms out there, and I'd be open to looking at that, certainly. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. I'm willing to listen.
I've been trying to figure out, I think that what we have to decide is, number one, when do we want this person to come to work for us? We've got to do a timeline, and we're going to have to back it up. Start with that point and then figure out where we're going. I think if you have a firm in mind that can do this, I think my internal auditor mentioned that Indeed, you can post jobs there, and they will do a certain amount of the work for you, of course, for a cost. It's not free. But personally, because it has to be in the sunshine, if we were to task our interim executive director with the receiving of the applications, making sure the application was complete, depending on what we've decided are the qualifications, et cetera, for her to then send the whole packet to everyone on the board. But this committee, this personnel committee, would be the ones that do the nitty-gritty, checking of references, those kind of things, so that then we as a board might make a recommendation of however many, if we get 10 applications, we could recommend 3 to the board. But the whole board would have all of the applications throughout this process. No, we wouldn't be holding anything and sending it later. Would that be what your interpretation would be?
My interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, because once the application gets to us, whether it's Carolyn or to a company, it becomes public record at
I
that
think
point.
it does either way.
Yeah.
Have we discussed the zone of silence? No, okay, we're not going to, okay.
No, we have not discussed that. We were just asking any questions particular up to Sunshine for Kristen, so that she doesn't need to stay the whole time. If there are any, as she just reminded, it's the same rules as any trust meeting.
Yes, I mean, you're just a subset of the larger body, and of course, the subject matter that you cannot discuss outside of a public meeting would pertain to this procurement, this selection, as opposed to any other council business, but council business as well, because you serve on the council.
There's a dollar amount threshold. I think I've heard $35,000 or less.
I don't know where that came from. There's no hard and fast number
No?
stated in the law. Our county procurement code has a threshold of $50,000 for formal solicitations. So I honestly don't know where that number came from.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I just don't know the source.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? I don't want to hold you up. I appreciate you.
Oh, I can stay as long
Okay.
as you want. I'm here.
All right.
So-
Very good. Well, I don't know how much you want to take on. That's my concern, of you getting resumes and then for us to vet the folks. That's why I think a professional firm would have an email address that was designated for the trust, and then they do the process. Once it's in, it's public record, and they can distribute to us. And then they have the tools necessary to do background checks. They pay for software, what have you, to do those type things as well.
The question will be, how detailed a background check do you want to do on the initial people, depending on how many you get? Like, we had 39 applicants. They did a basic vetting that anyone could do by looking on Google or but they also went through FDLE and stuff. But they didn't do the real due diligence until the board had decided which of these they wanted to pursue. So, those are all questions that you need. If you get a company, they'll ask you those questions.
Right, and so I would think that when we have the criteria too, they would check the boxes, and if somebody didn't, they'd be put in a different pile than somebody that's coming through, but that would I think that would work. I mean,
Do you have a company in mind?
no, I've dealt with Landrum on a local hire that was a national search, and I thought they did a phenomenal job. They were on point, on top of it, and I couldn't say enough good things about it. I think we open it up to any other firms in town or out of town or whomever wants to, I guess, submit a bid to do it and what their fees are, and then we'd have to evaluate it and go from there.
That's what I was gonna ask, do we have to submit, like we did for the attorney, if we would have to ask for a bid to hire an agency to do that?
Right.
I think that's why he was asking the question about the threshold dollar amount.
What's a solicitation?
Because is a professional services contract the same requirements?
We have certain exemptions in our county procurement code, but again, I don't know exactly what standards you're following.
What was the statute that Walter gave us last time? I know.
Go ahead. Well,
David has that.
well, I don't know if I've got that paper, but it was,
I looked it up when I got home and I had it, but.
yeah, I don't think what I printed out was what I looked at last time I looked at it, but
I may have written it down, so I don't know if
I don't remember the
I
number.
do have, a community member did text me a few weeks ago recommending that we use a national search firm, and said even local people can still be accepted as the new chair, I mean, as the new executive director, but he said that we should use a national search firm. It would take about 90 days. The whole process, he thinks, would take 90 days, and he said, you know, looked at the example of superintendent of schools and the new police chief, and they used a search firm. So that was just a recommendation from a local businessman here. 287-0575. Does that sound right?
I think that's the CCNA.
Do what?
I think that's the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act,
Okay.
if I heard it correctly.
So the question is, do we need to do an a request for proposal or solicitation for proposal to find a search firm? Is that our question that we're trying, or do we decide if we're doing a search firm to begin with?
I will say the school district did not do an RFP for our search. Because it was less than, but we have in statute, an amount, that, you know, doesn't have to be bid if it's under that amount. So
The
I don't
threshold
know where
amount.
we get that from this group, but, you know, different government entities have that ability to put.
That's
in.
correct,
And I
and the
think that's
county's
what-
threshold
What
is
Walter
50,000.
was saying, if we don't have a procurement policy, we fall under this 28705 or whatever that is a third.
Well, that's
Which was-
from the state code, I mean,
which
that's
was-
in the state statute, but I think that specific provision is the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, and that actually
It's-
applies like architects and engineers.
It's a competitive solicitation processes, procurement of commodities or
Oh,
contractual
for the state.
services.
Yeah, so that applies to state
It's
agencies.
threshold number 2 that had $35,000 limit. I just don't remember the number. But I
Just
don't-
1 second.
You know, it's very,
It's all this legal stuff.
right, that's why, because
I know.
it
Okay,
goes
then-
deep.
Then
and
it sounds like you guys are following the statute, the state statute that typically applies to state agencies
Right,
under
right.
the executive branch.
So would that work or not work?
I mean, if that's what you're following, I don't know. And you're right, they do have different categories, and 35,000, I think, is category 2.
Right, it is.
But I haven't read that statute in quite a while, so, because it doesn't apply to the county. So I'm not that familiar with it, I'd have to read it.
And I looked at it, that's why I was asking you, because I look at it, but I'm not, it's very, it's not easy to actually
Whatever category.
find exactly what
It's
you're looking for, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be under a different meaning than,
so
but,
the question is whether or not you all are bound by a $35,000 threshold for formal bids
right.
in general, and then whether there's some exemption that would pertain to procuring this type of service, a firm, professional firm, to vet applications.
And if-
Category 2 is 35,000.
And if I could explain a little bit why this kind of matters. I talked to somebody with a national search firm who said the typical charge is 30% of the first year's salary, which would put us pretty close to that number. And they don't, anyway, that's kind of a rule of thumb from a national search headhunter. And also keep in mind that Indeed, which I'm pretty familiar with just from our small family business, that reaches people primarily who are looking for jobs or who have looked for jobs. We will certainly push out to however we end up accepting applications, we'll push that out through our own networks. But a real recruiting firm might go find somebody who never thought about this too. So you are paying for that service. Just keep that in mind, though.
Okay, maybe we can come back to that. Let's look at the criteria and what we want, the employment for the executive director, the criteria that we've passed, if we're okay with this. And there are probably some, and this was in our article, was Article 6 of our bylaws, but I guess this is a template, and there's probably other criteria that we may want to see, or look at, maybe what other places around the state have used, but we can ask for that information. If there's anything that anybody wants to add to this, or think anything that's missing, or
Are you looking at the sample that you sent?
No, she's looking at the one that was in the
This is
bylaws.
from our bylaws. Okay, all right.
Do you have that?
Well, I do, but I just, I like this,
Which one's that one?
the sample one that has
From
it
Palm
laid-
Beach or from,
This is one that was part of this agenda.
there, she has Palm Beach on there,
Yeah, I have all of
SLC,
those, but this was
Broward,
a
job
sample-
description
A
example. Oh, I see
sample
it.
job description. It was
The
last
Children's
one.
Trust.
I don't know where it,
I like that better than ours. It lays out a lot more
Yeah.
what they need to do.
right.
Ours is just kind of,
It's kind of the
Frou-frou.
duties, yeah,
Yeah.
and this one talks about, who they report to, their status, their pay grade, which says established by the board of directors. It's got the position summary, general duties, specific, essential functions, and, the qualifications. And that's the only part I'm not like, crazy about, but, and it might be too much in qualifications for what we want. But, you know, in our bylaws, it doesn't say
we
what.
talk on the mic.
What are we expecting? Like here, it talks about qualification, education, position requires not less than a bachelor's degree in public administration, management, or other related area. You know, we don't have that in the bylaws.
Right.
So, you know, the bylaws tells you what their duties are and what their job function will be, but it doesn't really give you the qualifications and the specificity.
And that is what this committee will need to decide, no matter how we
Right.
search. It's gonna be up to this.
Because, the reason I went to this is because it looks a lot like what our job descriptions, you know, that are on our site. It talks about who they report to, you know, all those things that are part of a job description. And it keeps you from having to reinvent the wheel. If this person goes, then you've still got a job description for the next time. And I think everybody's basically did that, as I looked at all the different ones that were included in the original stuff that we received, as well as the stuff that you sent us. I mean, they may be laid out differently, but they have basically covered all the same areas.
but I do like the last one, Children's Trust. I don't know where, that's in Miami-Dade.
Yeah.
I like that one the best of all of them that I've seen.
This one.
This isn't, yeah, it's the one that was attached to the agenda on the CMB Children's Trust website. It's attached to the
Yeah.
agenda. That one right there.
Evergreen.
Is when you're looking at revised July 2016?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
I like that one the best of all. I don't know if you mean bilingualism is the best,
yeah,
but we're not Miami-Dade either,
that's
so.
right. I was a little confused over the president/chief executive officer is responsible for providing. You know, we might need to clean up some language there, but I think you can look at what's included in our bylaws and make sure that everything that's here is listed in general duties or essential functions. Just as a template for creating it.
Yeah, the one from Broward County was 2001,
Yeah.
so that's a long time ago. The one from St. Lucie is 2013. So the most recent one looks like the one from Miami-Dade. The one from Palm Beach is from 2010.
There was one that I had seen that I looked at, that I don't think is going to be, we could rule out appropriate for us. It had that the executive director, CEO, president, whomever, had a reporting line that I think there were 6 or 8 other people, most of whose title began with chief something or other. It was chief operating officer, chief resource officer, chief this, chief that, so that we plainly, I think as we look through these, need to make sure that we're not emulating something of that sort, recognizing that 1 or 2 of these, as I remember, had operating budgets as high as $100 million a year type of thing. So we need to kind of make sure that as we look at our executive director, we scale that position to the size of our organization and things as well.
Patty, do you know where the description came from that are in the bylaws? Or those of you who were so involved in the bylaws?
It came from the other, I don't know which.
It came from Alachua. It came
Okay.
from Alachua.
Okay.
Their bylaws are almost identical to ours, except for the changes that we made.
Okay.
And if you go to the other, you see pretty much the same language. It might be in different orders and all that. But if you go to the Children's Trust, the state organization, I think that's where most everybody got the template for putting those together.
So, this is, I guess we'll have to treat these kind of like the bylaws. I think that perhaps we match up the job description and the bylaws to some of these and come up with a draft document and share it with the board, and then underline, strike through, or we can get it where we need it to go. But I don't think we can get through it today line by line. I don't know really how to tackle that without,
Well, I think you and Carolyn could work together
and
and
come up with a draft.
come up, make sure the bylaws, our bylaws are on this, and come up with a draft, and then bring it back to us in the next meeting.
Okay.
And this will be in sunshine then.
And you might ask at tonight's meeting, is there anything particular a person wants to see in the job description?
Oh, yeah.
So that if somebody on the board is looking for a specific attribute
Right.
or skill set, we can discuss that as a board. Because I would hate for somebody to get kicked out because somebody said, well, you should have been looking for somebody with.
Well, I don't have what you have.
It was on the agenda, it was linked.
Well, I can't get my computer right
think
here,
it's
so
mine.
I was just gonna see it.
Yeah.
Is now the time, like, I think one thing we need to talk about is, do we want, the one that we're looking at from Miami-Dade said 10 to 15 years plus years in various management leadership roles. Is that something that we think that we need to have? Do you want less? Do you want more? I mean, should we say minimum
And I
of?
guess that's what, if we just walked through those and y'all could talk about, do you like that? Do you think too much or whatever? At least that's a starting point.
The exercise, the qualification, experience. Possess a passion for the trust. Be creative. I mean, these are, but the big one is how much experience do we expect them to have and what degree do they need to hold, if any.
And I think one thing we
That would be a
add,
vetting thing.
Right.
The second to the last bullet says an understanding of the dynamics of a large urban community with high levels of immigration. We would need to tweak that to fit our community. And I think it says understanding. I would like experience. Because I can understand it doesn't mean,
Because we only asked for the superintendent to have 5 years of experience.
Being in the school district or?
In an, misquote myself. Minimum of 10 years of successful administrative experience with at least 5 years in leadership and administration in a K-12 school.
I mean, I think we want someone who's been a leader
Yes.
for 10 years. I mean, I think in a
needs some
leadership
agents.
position. But you said 5 years.
Well,
You said 10 years and then you went to 5 years.
Well, it could be 10 years. What would be an acceptable job that where they may not have been in charge, but they might have been being groomed?
I've seen also, some of these have said a certain degree, specifically master's degree or even a higher level degree, or have opted in the direction of years of experience as an alternative to that.
Why
And
don't
I-
you say 10 years experience? I don't like the 10 to 15. I
Okay,
think
10 years experience.
at least 10 years.
Sometimes, I think you can find people after 5 years that are going to be superstars. And there's somebody in town I can think of right now that we hired that's been phenomenal. So we can choose to look at resume, if we say we said 5 years, but if they're not going to rise to the top, we can look at that, but it may not exclude somebody that may stand out. I don't want to limit ourselves to,
That one word bothers me too. Must.
so I don't know, I
I
maybe
agree with
5
that.
to
And
10.
That was kind of why we went with the 5 years in district leadership. You know, we had 10 years of leadership, because some people were not in schools, they might have been in a different setting. But one thing, you know, we would be sure that they have a strong business
I
acumen.
just was gonna say
Yeah,
that.
the
I mean, they're gonna
finance is
be
gonna be the
managing an
big thing.
not $10 million budget. We
Yes.
have nothing on here about
Yeah.
managing a budget.
And
Yeah.
do you have a dollar threshold that they need to have managed
Right,
a
a
certain
dollar for,
amount
I mean,
of
it's
the
like,
budget?
An organization with
and
a budget.
we have strong relationship builder, but they're gonna have to manage people, their staff, and we gotta make sure that they're able to manage staff. So we don't want someone who's just, hasn't done that before.
Because this person will invariably become the face
Oh,
of
yeah.
the trust.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna be doing the speaking, and it's not gonna be us anymore.
That's correct. You need character, you
Mm-hmm,
need personableness.
mm-hmm,
You need someone that can walk into every room,
mm-hmm,
old, young, black, white, rich,
Mhm.
poor,
mm-hmm,
and be welcome and listened to.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's not easy
It's not going to be easy.
to put into writing, but
Sure.
we will know when we interview them live and in person or by video. We did our initial interviews with the 10 people, they had to submit a video, you know, which kind of gave you a
Hi.
presence.
Yeah,
My name is
So
That's
I
right.
said what I said because, at least 5 years to me sounds like the way to go.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
At least 5 years.
And then
Because
we
they
can
have
bet
more
about
than
from
you
there.
But 5 years of what level of experience is it?
Some kind of leadership, we're not just gonna
Management and leadership, right?
and yes, we want them to be able to be a leader, to be able to go and be the face of the trust. We also want them to be a management, they have to manage people and
Right,
manage finances.
right.
Administrative and
I
or
don't know.
or management.
Sure. I'm not the good wordsmith.
Right.
Oh, here comes our attorney.
Hello. So to answer your question, so 287.057 is applicable to agencies, and that term is defined in 287.012 as any of the various state officers, departments, boards, commissions, divisions, bureaus, and councils, and any other unit of organization, however designated, of the executive branch of state government. Agency does not include the university and college boards of trustees or the state universities and colleges. So an agency, in my opinion, would not apply necessarily to the Children's Trust, which is a special district that's created by ordinance under Escambia County, and nor does it apply to Escambia County, and Escambia County has its own procurement code. You are correct that they do generally require a competitive procurement for anything that meets the Category 2 threshold of 35,000. And I did not see an exemption for retaining a vetting firm. So there are some exemptions, but I did not see that listed. So if that is indeed what you're following, I don't believe you're legally required to follow that provision under, the state's procurement code, but if that is what you're following, then I would think that a competitive procurement would be required.
Should we put that on tonight's board agenda to develop a procurement policy for the hiring committee and just whether it's.
And I don't know how other children's trusts have navigated that in terms of, whether there are best practices that these organizations follow, or if some have fallen in line with the county's procurement code. I don't know. Allison may know if she's looked into that. I don't know.
For this particular issue, Alachua is the last one to do this, and their county HR department did the vetting and search.
And they followed their county code, I'm sure.
So, exactly. So, and then Leon County just handled it very differently. And then, other than that, it's been decades, so it's not quite relevant.
So why was 287.057 entered into the discussion? Was it just considered a guideline to follow because it's the state's standard?
Yeah, I think,
The money figure, the 35,000 figure.
right.
It was because Walter said so.
Walter mentioned it.
Well, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, or
Because he
it's
just
good or
came from
bad.
Tallahassee, the last meeting, he said, you don't need to, I think he talked about the law firm, you don't need to do something because
Well, he said law's exempt anyway.
law's
but
exempt, so
then
this is different.
But-
I'd rather whatever the,
I don't want to contradict anyone. In my personal opinion, I don't believe that this body is legally required to follow that state statute for procurements.
So we don't have to do a competitive bid type.
That doesn't mean that you wouldn't want to
Right,
as
we
a best
want to, like,
practice,
do
but
like a request for solicitation like we did last time.
I don't believe that that specific
Right.
statutory provision applies to this
That sounds
body.
good. So we'll just do like we did last time, a solicitation for whatever we call it, national search firm, or, is that some?
yeah, I'd rather be, yes.
All right, what'd you come up with? 5 years of,
Well, I was just looking at our superintendent's job description, and I don't like a lot of these things. So it's a place, I mean, it kind of addresses some of the issues you were talking about. Establishes and maintains rapport with the board, prepares and coordinates the assembly and the agenda of the board. You know, it's very specific, and I don't know that we need to be that. Coordinates all budget preparations.
that's good.
You know, short and long-range planning. I'll
But you
maybe
gotta
this.
translate that into experience in
Well, then,
X,
see,
Y, Z.
on ours, we have knowledge and skills and abilities that are necessary.
So if you look at the one that, if you look at the job description, the one that was from 2013, it has a breakdown of the community relations and advocacy, board relations, and ensures the board is kept informed, provide the leadership, develops, like that kind of,
Which kind?
it's the one that is St. Lucie.
Okay, oh, good, that was a good one, too, yeah.
But it kind of has more detail as far as job duties or what the position will be required to do. I like the layout of the other one, but this one has a little more detail.
And it even says work with local legislative
Yes.
delegation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good. It talks about directional leadership and
we could
imagination
merge.
advice.
Yeah. It has a financial one, I think I saw financial also.
It also states that you must have your own car or transportation to get to work.
Oh, and it has a financial component too, on
Does.
page 1.
Just to throw that in there.
Yeah, I like St. Lucie.
may be the one I was looking at specifically under educational requirements, master's degree or down right below it, a bachelor's degree with 10 or more years of experience in a specific field and things.
Yeah, it says master's degree in social sciences, education related field with a minimum of 5 years of professional experience in management, leadership, community planning, and program development, agency budgeting, or related activities, or a bachelor's degree with 10 or more years of experience. So that's good. I like that.
Yeah. Why don't you work with the St. Lucie?
But with the format of the other one. May I
Put
like the
together.
layout though?
I like the other layout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the St. Lucia, that it does make comment of the Reverend mentioned their community relations and advocacy.
Yes.
Specifically puts out some things under that heading.
That's my, that's my area of,
Okay.
Yes.
Let's do that. That's a good one.
All right, so I'll get that, and we'll work together. And so if, on the safe side, if we do an RFP for search firms, how quickly can we get that going, do you think? How, I mean, I guess we have to back it in when we want to hire a director, but if we have to do an RFP, how many weeks? Do we send it out and wait
For
for
the-
comments and?
That takes a while, but it's okay. Caroline's like, okay, so for the solicitation for legal services, we did a paid advertisement between June 24th and July 9th, so it was about 2 weeks, give or take. And then we met this morning and looked at the 2 of them, and then we're gonna pass them out tonight, and then we're meeting again in 2 weeks to score them, and then recommend it to the full board on August 10th. So technically, if you wanted to do your solicitation and get it done next week, you could do that for 2 weeks and come back and by August 10th, maybe.
Where did,
Oh,
you said
that's
that
fast.
one was published or what did you use for that? Just the P and J or did it go on to a website?
It went on the
or-
Escambia Santa Rosa County Bar e-blast and on our website. So I don't know where we would have to, wherever search firms go to look for things.
And that's a good question. I emailed the Society of Human Resource Management today to see for the local chapter and got a bounce back. So I need to follow up with that, or it's, to find out if there's a local network. Again, if we want local to look nationally, which they can do, local people can look nationally.
The
You said,
executive,
did you say that you had talked to Landrum, or did you talk to Landrum? Because if Landrum can do it, it's local.
the current executive director for the Escambia County Healthy Start Coalition was obtained, tagged, whatever, through Landrum on a national basis. She actually came from Atlanta and moved down with her husband and things. So they do have national linkages and things and are capable of doing that. I'm not trying to sell them, I don't.
Well, so
Have
so
ownership,
y'all
I'm
use
just-
Landrum. But do we need to be fair and open it up to other search firms who
Yeah.
might want to, a mom and pop search firm who might want to apply?
Sure.
Yeah.
Just don't know how you,
How what?
how do you reach out to them? I mean, we do have a place on our website
Right,
that for procurement, so
For
if
announcements.
anybody's looking for that information, they go to our website and there it is.
But how we tell them is,
It's there on the website for them to look. That's the way the district puts out theirs. You know,
Yes.
anybody that wants to do business with the school district knows to go to that place on their
Right.
website to look for opportunities.
So we need to get a draft of a solicitation form, so you don't have to make one up.
Okay.
Stephanie's good at cutting and pasting.
But you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If we can get a solicitation of a national search firm,
A firm that can do a national
search, yes.
And
I don't know
that's
what they're
what-
called, yes.
yeah.
I've never done this process before.
head
So what action tonight at the board meeting will discuss this to get the board approval to start that process, correct? Okay. All right.
You might consider asking them to authorize this group to contract with the right firm before the next trust meeting, just so we're not another 2 weeks
Yeah.
delayed, if this group can meet again
Before
At the-
August the 10th.
at the end of our,
I don't know if you'll have
Period.
time. What's our calendar? So if you got a solicitation out, let's say on the 19th, let it run the week of the 19th, the week of the 26th, close it on the 30th. Then this committee meets and reviews them the first week of August. Technically, we could have a recommendation to the board for a search firm on August the 10th.
As long as you give the public a week's notice that you're going to do that.
Right, that would be on our
that's
agenda.
the regular meeting.
That's our regular meeting.
On August 10th.
You've got to make sure you meet.
So the week before, somewhere.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
So just FYI, our son is, graduating from boot camp that week,
Oh,
so
wow.
we'll be gone.
That's
The 10th?
exciting.
The
The first week, that's
The first week
exciting.
of August, okay.
Well, that would just be the meeting to
That's
just,
just be one person, though, I'm just saying.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't Lumen on this committee too? Okay.
Oh, that's right.
Mhm.
Okay. Then 4 weeks after that, our oldest and her husband are expecting our first
Oh,
grandchild.
You're too young to be a grandfather.
Almost 55 years old. I'll be 52 in 3 weeks.
Oh, you're too young.
She and her husband are having our first grandchild. So
Yeah.
A boy or a
getting a
girl?
little excited.
Liza's getting, gonna
Calm
be
me
that.
down.
Yes,
Calm me
that
down.
is, yeah.
Right.
When,
It is.
when is her due date?
Let me call my wife and ask.
You are
Okay, so,
That's wonderful.
Okay.
So my
So
daughter
learning,
is due I think it's about the end of August.
Yeah, early August, late August.
Oh,
early
does
September.
she live
so
here?
August
Where
4th.
she lives?
I mean, what date can we,
All right, so we're
We
going to
can
close
do it. But again, if we're gonna.
the advertising on July 30th.
right?
And
I just
have
did that.
a meeting of the personnel committee before the 10th. So it would have to be like maybe the 3rd. I may not be in town either.
Well, we need a
I'm just-
quorum is what we need, so.
I'm just throwing that out there. Or we can wait until September, until, pick it, I mean, till the next, September, the next board meeting. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there, if we want to go ahead and get started quicker. I keep looking at Carol like, she's like, yes, yes,
Well,
yes,
Our meeting's the 10th, how about Monday the 9th? Would, you
that's
out of
fine.
town too?
I will be here by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But I don't have to be here.
That's fine, the 9th is fine.
That works. Wonder what space? I don't know.
Oh, right.
National Association
Monday
of
meeting, but I'll see what I
Professional.
can do.
Okay, well, what time is your standing? We don't have to do, we can do it at any time.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, we're open.
Okay.
We just gotta find a meeting space that's,
Um,
all right. I mean,
Monday at, we can pick a time. We can probably do it,
Oh, yeah.
where's our,
In a
10
we'll
a.m.?
ask them, sure, here?
She said 2, 'cause she already-
2?
Oh,
Who said 2?
she can't be here till after 2.
After 2?
Yeah, I'm flying in.
Okay.
But we want your input.
Well,
We'd
I
like
can
your
give you my
input.
input before you get here.
Well, you can't give it to me.
I can give
Yeah,
But I
Carol.
can't tell you what she said.
That's right, that's right, that's
Right,
right.
attorney?
I mean,
I've learned.
I can always call in if you want to do it earlier in the day.
No, we could do it later. I didn't.
You have to be somewhere at 6. We could do it at 5.
We could do
I'm not,
four.
you're the one who's the chair.
Yeah,
You need to be-
yeah, I mean,
I'm-
whatever works for y'all.
Okay.
He's got a meeting at
I
6.
may have handbells at 5.
Oh, that's right.
3:30?
Okay,
Are we
3:30.
talking about on the night?
Uh-huh,
Okay, 3:30.
okay.
3:30.
Can I ask a question? So the closing submission date would be the 30th of July, and then the next meeting would be the 9th of August
The personnel committee
to review the candidates'
to review the.
submissions.
And it might
Make a
be,
recommendation to the trust board on the 10th.
I mean, it might be a 5-minute meeting, it might have one person apply.
And to
So,
clarify the ads that we did for the legal services, we did one paid ad. It was put out during that time frame. It didn't last the whole time. It was posted on our website, but the paid ad was only once. I think you all need to decide, well, do we want to do a paid ad? We are not sure where it would go because we're not sure there's a network of these national firms or not. But do you want it paid, or do you want it just on the website and some social media, which we have not reactivated the social media, but I think Emily's ready to when we need to.
It's not too expensive. Let's do what we can to get the word out. And
you're right.
I don't know what that,
I mean, do you want it in the Pensacola News Journal?
oh,
But the Pensacola News Journal puts theirs on Indeed.
okay.
Ask Max.
Their ads for search firm.
Then we can put it
They're
on.
linked to it, I guess. All right.
The internal auditor at the district always puts his advertisements there, and they go out to all the, well, maybe it's not Indeed, they go out to all the Gannett newspapers.
Yeah, whatever we can do to be open and let it fly, let's do it. It's not too
I trust.
expensive. Yeah.
Define too expensive.
I don't know. I have no idea
The
what
two
those
of
things
you,
are.
I recommend the two of you have the authority to
Okay.
determine that.
There is an organization called the
Second thought.
Professional Employer Organizations. There are 487 PEOs in the U.S. that provide payroll, benefits, other HR services to hundreds of thousands of small and mid-sized businesses, et cetera, and they do have a single website here that I think I've forwarded on to you.
And I promise I'm not trying to slow us down, but should we consider, a little buffer in case your scenario does happen?
That we only have
Stephanie, that
one?
we only have one, and that one may not meet our criteria, may
Yeah.
not be that face that we're looking for, that personality that we need.
For the search firm.
Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah.
I'm just asking, should we consider just a little buffer time past, right now we only have one time set. Should we build in a little time, if that means moving the 9th up to put something else behind it, just so that we won't be caught completely off guard if we're not sold?
Yeah, well, so I guess if the night comes around and we only have one person, one firm who's trying to be a search firm, we don't like that firm, we just say we're gonna reopen the bid,
And just push it back to the, we just gotta say.
Right.
I thought I should at least say it,
yeah.
to make sure that it's said in case
So
it
we don't
happens.
have
So we
to
won't be
automatically take that one person.
totally blindsided,
That's a
right?
good point, both through Children's Medical Services, which was part of Department of Health, so very much a state organization, and through the Healthy Start Coalition as an affiliated organization, we had that ability that if we needed to, we would reopen bids for things in order to solicit additional people. Correct, but it's a good point.
Well, I think the question then is, do you have some kind of a scoring, a rating system ahead of time so that you can say if they don't have X, Y, Z, we need to keep it open? And I'm asking that question, or was it just subjective?
No, we had with the state agency, in particular Children's Medical Services, we had some very rigid criteria as far as things like education, experience, those types of things. And if the pool of applicants, whether it was one or at times we had 3 or 4, but none of them had the required things, we'd be looking for a nurse care coordinator, for example, and they either didn't have an RN degree, they had an LPN degree, or they were fresh out of RN school and had no experience, or they had only had experience with adult care and no pediatric care and things, and we would reopen the pool at that time because they did not meet our pre-existing criteria. Now, looking for a search firm, something in that capability, I guess we could put together some generalizations. Are they people that have the capability of doing a national search? What are the things that we specifically would want from that firm? that we could say either, yes, this firm will meet our needs, or that, no, they don't have those mental. For example, it's a very small firm that, yeah, it'd be great to get mom and pop, but they have no ability or experience in doing a national search, as an example. Or they're located, maybe not here in Pensacola, but somewhere distant, and that is where all their contacts are, and we're not going to hire somebody from Portland, Oregon in all likelihood, that type of thing. So we could probably put together some things that we're going to ask this firm to do for us, that we could put in place ahead of time as criteria to either say we're going to reopen the search for a search firm. That doesn't sound a little ironic, but nonetheless, or not. I'm just offering this for consideration.
Eventually, we're gonna have to come up with a procurement guide, a vendor guide. I don't know that we have to do it at this point, but, I was just looking at what's on the purchasing page at the district level. And, there's a purchasing policies, rules and laws, there's, vendor's guide that talks about how the payments are made and all that kind of stuff. So, eventually, we're gonna have to hopefully find somebody that's already done all this, and we can just copy and change it, put our name in there. But I was looking to see if there was, something that would help us with a rubric, because I know they do rubrics when they do the bids, but I don't see one.
So what would be something that would not be acceptable? Let's look at it that way. How much, what are we looking for?
I would think capable of a national search is what we've said. I would think that we have to have some budget that they're going to be willing to do it for. Well, you had mentioned 30% of the first year's salary, or whatever that might be, that we say that their budget needs to match ours.
We don't want someone who would exclude local. Remember that? We said we want to make
Yes.
sure we cover local.
What
Yes.
about, you told me earlier, Carolyn, about one search firm, they said they should guarantee that the person would stay there for a year.
Right.
That was
Good
nice.
point.
And that they would, in the
Not guaranteed,
contract,
but they
it
would
would be, in the contract, that they would redo the search for free if the person did not stay a year.
I like that.
I like that too. So far we have someone that would cover local, have a national reach, could guarantee a year's stay, and if not, they would offer a free search for that breach.
That could be a mixed blessing. But
That's true, we may not want to use them again, but they offer it.
But remember, ultimately, the board is who hires the person. You all are gonna be the decision makers.
So if the recruiting firm is going to serve in the capacity of, if they're going to have any decision-making authority, if they're going to be vetting applications, then it could create sunshine issues. If, however, they're just going to be more or less recruiting, gathering the applications, and then bringing them to you with some very minimal preliminary review to ensure that they have in fact checked all the necessary boxes, that's just something to consider. So you may want to be careful in terms of how you tailor the solicitation for the firm itself to ensure that you don't have a sunshine issue.
So that could potentially be one of our criteria, have experience working with
Government
Florida,
agencies.
or at least have familiarity with Florida sunshine law requirements, something to that effect.
Because really, somebody in that firm cannot talk to a colleague about an application without it being, it means it goes that.
Well,
Or not.
my biggest concern would be that they're, in an office somewhere behind closed doors, potentially in a group or even one person, reviewing all these applications and saying no, yes, and then they bring you a selection that they have ranked essentially, and eliminated certain options. You know, that's a decision-making function, and technically, you know, whether they're doing it, or you're doing it, or the whole council's doing it, that's something that should be in the sunshine.
But their notes are all public record. If they're ranking people, that paperwork is technically
But
public
the
record,
sunshine law
right?
requires a public
Yeah,
meeting.
I wouldn't expect them to do anything other than to review the application as to its
General
validity.
sufficiency.
Validity.
Et cetera,
And that's,
that to us.
that's more of a clerical function.
I don't want a search committee, a search firm ranking them for us. They don't know.
And
I
eliminating
just-
options.
That's our job, that's how we were appointed.
Things as you mentioned, they're not going,
And in that
unless
case,
it's truly a local
You're the
company.
body that would
You
be
get somebody
subject to
out
the
of
sunshine
Atlanta,
law.
they're gonna
If
have
they're
very
performing
little
a clerical function, that's
sensitivity to
fine.
what is gonna fly in our community.
It's when they get into the decision-making process that it becomes a problem. 'Cause then you basically have a subcommittee.
So as long as they are just making sure they check the boxes and they give us all those applications that have
Mhm.
applied, they check the boxes,
Mhm.
that's what we want them to do.
That, in my opinion, would be the safest route to
Yes, ma'am.
avoid any kind of sunshine issue.
You have a question?
Well, no, it just, that's a lot easier than the other. Then the work would come from this group, and we've got some good examples of how to move forward after that.
All right, any other discussion on this? I think we've got enough to get us going in the right direction.
And I will be sending you what Achieve Escambia used for their ranking and how they, and just to think through that, and Ronald House shared theirs also, but how you might weight certain experience once we get down to the applications. So some good stuff there, but we need to get those applications in.
All right.
Have you seen the Chief's job description? When the search was on, we eventually hired Dr. Cooper. Have you seen that?
I don't think that's what, they gave me the application, the question and how they did that, and then how they scored the things. I don't
Yeah.
think what she just sent me, I don't think includes the actual application.
Okay,
So I'd be interested in that. I mean, we would be interested in that.
yeah,
so,
I think that might help us.
Okay.
I was on Achieve at that time, and from what I recall, it was very detailed in looking for a certain kind of person,
Mhm.
both academically and practically.
Well, that would help us flesh out.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Anything along those lines?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Would not be on plagiarization.
They said they will.
Before we get to public comment, is there anything else additional on this topic? Okay,
Did we decide a time for the 9th of August?
3:30, I believe, right?
Location to be determined.
Did we decide a place?
No, I think we need to check with this space here.
Is it against the law to go to a church?
No.
Do you, and we just need to know,
What do we
because we
need?
would want to record it. Do you have recording capability?
I do.
Well, we'd love to go.
We'd love to come to your church.
Is it available?
Like,
Okay, we have a location.
No.
What would be needed as far as making it for public access or whatever, just need to be
We'll
able to record?
publicize it,
Okay.
and then we'll put it on our YouTube channel that we may or may not have, but we will.
And since
And
it's
yours,
open
too.
to the public, we'll just have it in the sanctuary, that way we have plenty of seating and it can be social distance, it won't be a problem.
Cool.
Thank you.
and
for
you want
offering.
to give the address to the public?
901 North 8th Street, Greater Little Rock Baptist Church, Pensacola, Florida, 32501.
Can you pray for us too while we're there?
We'll pass the collection plate too. All right, no, I'm kidding.
Don't scare them off.
All right,
That's good.
thank you.
Okay, we need,
All right, is there any public comment at today's meeting? Madison? Okay, there is none. All right,
Will you be posting that on our website as far as these additional meetings and things that we set?
yeah.
right.
She's probably already got it up there, knowing.
There's a calendar page now.
Thank you. Did you turn it off and turn it on? All right, with any other further business?
We can talk about grandchildren, but that's all you.
All right, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We're done. Second, on favor? Aye. Thank you.